Great, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We are in our Thursday, November 19th, Community Police Audit Committee. I'm sorry, I have my agenda up for last night's meeting, and that will not work. They look the same, so. Thank you for joining us for Community Policing Performance Audit Steering Committee. Appreciate everybody being here. We were just talking about how the silver lining of not having to park our cars and run in through the rain right now. So we'll take any silver lining in these today. But Courtney, would you mind kicking us off by calling roll?
I'd be happy to. Jody Sherwood.
Here.
Thank you. Anne Marie Banfield. I don't yet see Anne Marie. Deputy Chief George Burke. Thank you. Ashley Hamilton.
I'm here. Good evening.
Thank you. Levy Herrera. I don't see Levy yet. And then Kathleen Jonathan. Don't see Kathleen. And Casey Copcho.
I am here.
Excellent. Nice job getting in under the wire. Good work. Cindy, I can't try your last name. I'm Linasar.
Lanasar, close, here.
Nice, close. And then Scotty Nowning.
Here. It was close, yeah.
Okay. And then Ani.
Oni, I am here. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Courtney. First item on our agenda is our approval of our minutes. And so we received those in an email packet from Thursday, November 5th. Does anybody need time to review, or will entertain a motion for approval?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you, Cindy. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Scotty.
Thank you, Scotty. So all those in approval of the minutes from Thursday, November 5th, if you could just signify by saying aye, raise your hand, it'll help us out. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. Thank you for those, Courtney, and the staff and who helped with those. We are here today to listen and understand how the site visits are going, and also to give our own feedback and observations on what we've been seeing and hearing. I know that folks are out talking to their neighbors, their business partners, their family and friends. And so we'll be working to gain some feedback from you tonight as well. But I'm going to turn it over to Bob and team. And Bob, I think we met everybody from your team before, but would you mind maybe going around the room just to introduce?
Sure. So with me is Brian Kaufman and Ricky Godey. So it's the three of us that are the principal auditors on the project. We have some folks that are back in Chicago that are doing some of the work on crowd control, protesting, and also equity issues and inclusion issues. So those folks will be doing a lot of more of a paperwork type of audit where we're the ones that are going to be kind of on the front line, meeting with folks and talking to folks, and primarily listening to folks. We're not doing a lot of talking. We're kind of listening because that's how we're learning. So it's kind of the process we're going through now.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Do you want to go, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how it's going, where you're at with the interviews, who you've met with, if you could, and how that's looking.
So just to remind everybody where we are, this is actually our first week on the audit project. So this is the first opportunity we've had to really get acquainted with a variety of different cross sections of the city, both from the governmental section, the city departments, the social service providers, some of the institutions like the hospital and things like that, but also starting to have some of the conversations, or not conversations, but listening sessions with community members. We have actually done 35 of those interviews during the course of this week. So we're pretty aggressive in terms of trying to meet as many folks as we possibly can, listen to as many folks as we possibly can, in large part because of Courtney and the other support staff and helping us arrange a lot of the meetings. So I really have to give my hat off to the work that they did, because it was a little, we've had some technical challenges during the course of the week. Some links were broken and things like that, but they were all very quick to get them reestablished. And and really helped us through a number of the conversations that we had and really getting us organized and keeping us on track. So quite honestly, out of those 35 interviews, we only missed 3. And we're making up those 3 the beginning of next week. So we really have covered a lot of the list that the task force members have provided to us. There's only a few that we haven't been able to do that we're kind of following up on. So we haven't forgotten the few that we haven't gotten to, that we're going to try to pick those up before Thanksgiving so that we can close out that first week. So we're going to go into the next week a little bit in terms of doing that. But I think one of the areas that we really need to do some more work in, quite honestly, is we really got a good overview of the structure and organization of the Salem Police Department. We really need to now start to get more involved in understanding how it operates, the things that are going on. And so we've got a good overview about how the organization looks like from the outside. Now, in the next set of interviews, we're going to spend a little bit more time looking internally, because if you think about it, the purpose of this audit, the police department is the core of that audit. So we really need to spend some time really better understanding the culture inside the organization, having more conversations with the folks that are doing the work inside the organization. We've had great conversations with Scotty and his board and the leadership team in the Salem Police Department. But then again, I think we've also had a number of great conversations, and some of the more fabulous conversations and richest conversations have been with community groups we've been talking to during the course of this week. So it's really been a really good experience. I think all 3 of us have come to a realization we're starting to see the light. So that's a good thing. Usually if we're at the end of this week and we're not starting to get a sense of where we're going and how things are developing, we'd be in big trouble. But I think because everybody's being frank and forthright and giving us, their impressions of things, that it's really helped us a long way. And like I said, we've covered a lot of territory during the course of that week. Brian and Ricky, I don't know if you want to add anything with respect just to the overview of what we've been doing this week.
No, I would just echo that, Bob. I mean, I think a great group of representatives so far, and people that aren't hesitant, maybe a little first apprehensive about the process, but certainly during the course of our discussions and listening sessions, they've just become, I think, very open and very willing to share. And I didn't see any intent to share in a way that wants to tear down the department or tear down the community, but really are committed to sharing to make it better. So I would just reinforce my experience, or our experiences this week have just been really good.
I can't add any more to that. The candor of all of the conversations has been very impressive.
That's great. Thank you. Bob, are there any groups that you need help with in making connections, or any groups that you feel like maybe there's a missing area that you need more advice and help with?
So I think there are a couple of groups that we were identified early on that we're still trying to connect with. And I know that some of the task force members are helping us with that process already. So we're hoping to get those scheduled. But by the end of next week, we will have exhausted that initial list that you all gave us. And so I asked the steering committee to do is to start thinking about who are those other kinds of community groups and organizations that we should be talking to. Again, we want to get a good cross section of the community. So think about, and I think you also saw the list. So kind of go back through that list, see if there's anything that we kind of missed in the process. There are some still organizations that, like I said, we're still trying to schedule. We're picking up next week. We had some great suggestions as we were doing community group organizations that we've actually subsequently picked up additional groups. So that's also helped us as well. And Courtney, I'm pretty certain that the task force has a list of everybody we've spoken to, right? At this point?
We did supply that in preparation for tonight's meeting as one of the attachments. So that is available. And if you'd like, I could share screen and show, but it's up to the group. I think I see Ashley has it, others have it. So.
Okay. Jody, do you want to go through that list at all, or just do you think?
I think that it probably would be a good idea. It might help perk our memory, and some of us that have sat in the groups, it might help bring some of those to light. So do you actually have it there, Courtney, with you? Or if there's a member that could help me read through the list, that would be great.
I do have it.
Yeah.
Great.
So this might be jarring. I've been in a completely different environment. So let's see how this works. I think
There you go.
Is that working?
Yep.
There it is.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we haven't met with Bridgeway yet. Through ride-alongs, we haven't been able to do that obviously because we couldn't be on the ground. So that's going to be something we need to do at some point in time to get acquainted both with the officers and also kind of get a sense of the city and have the officers themselves kind of give us a tour around the city and stuff like that. So that's an area that we're not going to be able to get to until we can get on the ground. We're hoping December 7th is the next tentative week that we want to be in Salem. I'm not optimistic. I should be because I usually am optimistic that things will get better by then, but it doesn't seem to be trending that way at this point. So, you know, what we've talked about internally is that we may have to delay an on-site until January if we have to. But you know, at some point we physically have to get on the ground. Just trying to figure out when that's going to happen. A lot of that would have been accomplished this week. We just couldn't get to it. Brian's doing the work around DPSST, which is the Department of, tell me, Public Safety. Brian, Public Safety.
Standards and training.
Standards and training. So Brian's actually doing that aspect of it. We have to kind of get to some of the other communities that are listed here that we haven't gotten to, that we made a point of doing that. So that the rest of that list, except for, no, I guess the rest of that list, we really have to, on that first column, we have to get to. And then Cindy, you're with, no, that's a different organization. So the Salem Leadership Foundation is scheduled. So we're going to be meeting with those folks as well. We're looking for some student work groups that I think Deputy Chief Burke was going to help us with, and some other folks were going to help us with in terms of setting up those meetings. The Chamber of Commerce, we haven't had a chance to meet with them yet. At-risk youth, we're working with some of the social service providers to help us set up those meetings. I think we have a meeting, thanks to Lieutenant Aguilar, on Friday, ending youth homelessness, which is an organization that we're going to be meeting with on Friday, which I think is going to be one of those groups that we need to talk to. We're going to be introduced and talk to the LEAD program. Tell me what DHS is again. It's not the Department of Homeland Security, is it?
Human Services, Department of Human Services.
Well,
So they
no,
have the Child Welfare
Department of
Division.
Human Services, and so that, you know, we've been able to do that. And the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council, I don't think we have a meeting set with them yet, so we need to do that as well. And then with the Faith-Based Pastoral Association, and Oni, you have to help me, is that the group that we're meeting with next week, or is that a different group that we're meeting with next week?
So they're faith-based.
Yes. Is that the Seattle Leadership Foundation we're meeting with?
No, not on the 24th. No, that would be the Black clergy.
And is that associated with the faith-based, or is that something else we're talking about?
Well, they are faith-based. I mean, Black clergy, Black clergy group, and the schedule is they're scheduled for the 24th at 1.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't know if that's the same one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we need to meet with the AANCP board meeting. We're hoping to catch up with those folks next week, the executive board. And I think you'll see the rest of the schedule. Those are all different organizations. I don't know if you just want to scroll down, Courtney, that we've been able to meet with, except for the Arches Unsheltered Resident Population. But Ashley's helping us set up another meeting with the outreach, her client care team. We'll be meeting with Robert Marshall and that team next week. They're going to help us with doing the interviews because the population is a little bit apprehensive about meeting with us, and we want to make sure that we get their input. So they're going to actually help us, and we're going to meet with them in terms of structuring some of the questions for that meeting going forward. And Robert Marshall's been great in terms of putting that meeting together and getting the invitations sent out.
So
We had a great meeting with the Neighborhood Association chairs. That was a really good meeting, I thought. And interestingly enough, that was the first time that group has really come together as a group. So I thought that was really fabulous in terms of them coming in and sharing their different insights. And I think they got a lot out of the meeting as well, because they got to understand the different neighborhoods across the city. And I would have thought that was something you do regularly, but I think that's something I think they found valuable and that they're going to want to continue to do. Had a great meeting with the Community Police Review Board. Thanks, Jody. That was really an interesting conversation, and really getting their input and their insight in that process. Had a really great meeting with Salem Health today, and that was really because Cindy really helped us with that and really brought together a number of folks. And we covered a lot of territory during that conversation. Had a great conversation with the Center for Hope and Safety, which just preceded this meeting. And that was really a great meeting. We really enjoyed that. And then we have a meeting a little bit later tonight with the grassroots organizers, activists, and leaders after this meeting. So that's kind of a summary of everything we've been doing this week. We had a number, you don't see it, but we've had, I think, just about every city councilor. I think we just may have missed one in the process, but we've been able to interview every one of the city councilors, including the mayor, during the course of the week as well.
Any thoughts or ideas on the list of other areas to cover or to make sure we inquire with?
Yeah, so I was gonna jump in there, but Bob was going through the list. So I know hitting NAACP as well as the clergy themselves. There's another group I think that we need to recognize that may not have necessarily associate or affiliate in either one of those two groups, but still gets to our BIPOC community, and that would be, I can only say the name of the person that I have the most contact with, and that's Greg Simpson. But there are some others, Julianne Jackson, that's part of that group. And there are some others as well, Jonathan Jones, that I think kind of putting it, maybe there's a way we can set up a consortium of folks that we could bring into the conversation.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I invited them to the grassroots meeting tonight. And I know Julianne's going to be there, and hopefully Greg will, but I invited them to the group tonight.
Thank you for doing that, Oni. I also just want to make sure that everybody's aware. I think we sent it out, but Casey had that great suggestion to ask or solicit stories from the community. And as of a couple of minutes ago, we have about 72 responses coming in.
3291.
Saying that it's really starting to pick up as it's spreading around through social media. So if you have a chance to push that resource, that would be much appreciated in communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Casey, for that suggestion. Great suggestion. And I just want to make sure I understand it's on the website today, on the City of Salem's website. They can find it on the main page, or do they have to go to the audit page?
It's on the audit page itself. And we had a story on the audit on the front page, and it might have just turned out because there's been quite a little bit of news going on lately. I'm sure elevated again to the homepage. Okay. People can find it more easily.
Any other thoughts or ideas?
This is Anne Marie.
Hi, Anne Marie.
I am wondering, have you guys thought at all about meeting with Oregon State Hospital? I know that there's often interactions with law enforcement, and it can be confusing because of state troopers versus Salem PD. So that might be a good partner to talk to about just kind of how that's going. And then I didn't see the sheriff's office on there, and I thought that would be a good partner to talk to. Although I do see the local public safety and coordinating council. I don't know if that is kind of seen as the same thing.
Great, thank you. I did too notice Willamette University or Chemeketa Community College. I don't know groups that they may be able to also help us with. They may be good to reach out to as well, if I'm forgetting anybody in that genre.
You could probably put Corbin University on there too.
I was able to sit in on a listening session last night and actually participate as part of the group, and I was pleased at the feedback that folks were really willing to offer. And I echo what Brian said. I think folks are really trying to help facilitate a change that we may be in a positive way. I think that the thoughts and ideas that were coming to the table were really helpful, and it's great to see people wanting to be engaged in the process. So are you finding that your groups are, well, I know that you mentioned that you are hearing the feedback. Is there anything else that we could be doing to help generate more comments, thoughts, or ideas from a steering committee's perspective?
I mean, I know there are other communities within sections of the city, and I'm just wondering if there's some pronounced or community organizations or groups that we're not touching. I mean, we've got the neighborhood associations, which is kind of a representation of the entire those neighborhoods. But I'm just wondering if there are other subgroups or other groups or community groups that are there, but not necessarily part of the larger network.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I was thinking of, they're called RJOC, Racial Justice Organizing Committee. Might be a good group to reach out to. And I don't know if I can't remember if anybody mentioned Loose as a group to reach out to. They're doing significant work in the community and have had some interactions that I think would be relevant to the steering committee's work.
Thank you. Casey, I think maybe you unmuted.
I am muted because I actually spoke with the organizers at Loose this afternoon. We just happened to cross paths. And I believe they met with somebody yesterday. I don't know who it was. So.
Did they meet in some other capacity besides representing Loose, or?
I don't believe so.
And you thought this was yesterday?
Maybe, but I would definitely second Oni's suggestion.
Okay. Now we'll reach out to them, and if they said no, we already done that, we don't want to do it again, that's good too. So
I would find it hard to believe that they wouldn't take you up on the opportunity to offer additional items for consideration.
Great. So we'll reach out to them as well.
Anybody want to talk about their observations if you've been able to attend a meeting? I would love to hear how that's going. Any suggestions in the process for the meetings, anything along those lines? Please, Casey.
I'll just offer this up, and it's going to be maybe an uncomfortable one, but something that several folks have talked to me and Bob and Ashley and everybody's probably used to this one, but it's the public perception of, it's just the challenge of the public perception of the community police audit being conducted by so many folks that are ex-law enforcement themselves. And so the public, when they've come to me at least, and in some of the meetings I've seen, are skeptical on, how can we as a community believe that they have, the auditor is objective, or at least isn't, letting these biases skew the results of their work. And so I would just be remiss if I didn't, bring it up to say that that's something that we need to be mindful in all the interactions that we have to help set folks at ease. And I know that you're all professionals, so that you do that as a.
Okay, so I mean, we're keenly aware of that, and again, I think the fact that there's an audit going on, whether it's among the police themselves or the community groups, you have to wonder if there is an agenda and things like that. And we do our best, and I think we've got a demonstrated body of work that demonstrates that we pretty much do these things as objectively and as partially as we can. And so we really try to put things aside. We haven't formed any formal opinions yet. We're still learning. And that's going to take us a little while. We're seeing some recurring themes, but we need to validate those and really understand people's different perspectives in terms of what they're seeing and the kinds of change they want. I think Brian's comment earlier is really telling, that people want to see that kind of change and are willing to be forthcoming and giving us a lot of information. Even if we may meet with some initial skepticism, I think we've been able to get through that and have those positive and productive conversations.
So one of the things that I would offer up, Bob, and directly to Casey, that may be beneficial, I don't know, is that skepticism falls on both sides. So it's interesting, the community sees the skepticism having law enforcement, former law enforcement executives who are doing an audit. They certainly understand the business, but then there are others inside the organization who have the same feeling of discomfort that this is just going to, that I don't want to use the word witch hunt, but it's an uncomfortable. I don't think our organization is used to having things like audits done. And so they don't know what to expect. And so there's some caution and skepticism about that internally. And I know that we have really encouraged our folks within the organization to be candid, say what you think, say what you feel, put it all out there, because we're not going to get any better if we don't take a look at it, warts and all.
Thank you.
You today with Salem Health, if I could just comment on that one since I was a listener, is that the questions were broad. The questions were about the work, the collaboration, and then I thought some of the best questions were from a system of two organizations that have to care for our community. What isn't working, and what could you improve upon on a systems approach? And as we both have bodies of work, as all organizations have bodies of work, and confine that body of work sometimes due to rules and regulations, I thought that was a very interesting question, and it created some good conversation around systems approaches to bettering our community, systems approaches for a healthier community. And I thought that was a good approach to look at things that we could improve upon that haven't been done yet.
Thank you, Cindy. And thank you too, Casey, for putting that on the table. I do appreciate you speaking up about that. So thank you.
If I could weigh in for a second.
Please.
I'm obviously I represent the union members, so there has to be buy-in from the community and from any group that's going to be subject to, hey, you've been audited. If I went to Casey's work, for example, and said, hey, I'm going to audit you, and he would say, well, what is your expertise in this area? And I would say, well, I don't have any, but I could maybe provide some insight. But I think it's very important that the folks doing the audit have credibility with the people they're auditing. So I don't know of another way to do it other than have a mix of people with experience. And it is, I think, helpful that they're all former. They're not in the career field now. They don't really have necessarily a dog in the fight. If I were just looking at it from a community member's perspective, I would be a lot more skeptical if they say, hey, Oregon State Police is going to audit Salem Police and officers are going to. So I just, I would say to Casey, I don't know another way to do this where you're going to have folks with credibility to offer suggestions to the police officers and say, hey, this is what we've learned, and we've been there, and we understand maybe why you're doing what you're doing or where you can improve, because you're gonna have to have buy-in on both sides. So I would offer that, and when you're trying to explain to folks why there's former law enforcement, it probably has to be at least a mix.
Yeah, and Jody, can I just make a comment? Because I think Casey's point, again, I'll agree with everybody else. And I think the fact that people are asking that question is very relevant to what's going to happen, not just during the audit, but what's going to happen, I think, more importantly, after the audit. Because the test, it's going to be one thing to get an audit or a report. It's going to be another for the department and the community then to pull that apart and look at the parts that are going to be most applicable to moving the department and city forward. But, I appreciate when people at least are in this process, because that, at least for me, it tells me they're taking this seriously, rather than saying, we don't care who does it, how it's done. I think those points are very important. And I think when we have been talking with the groups, that's been kind of some of the themes that have come with this, this apprehension, or at least, they want to make sure that not so much the audit, but what's going to happen after the audit. I think that's what I've seen so far as being, we just want to see everybody move forward that's going to be beneficial to the community and to the department. So, I've seen that a lot of times with communities we've worked with, very apprehensive about the process on both sides, as was said. So I think, at the end, when this is completed, the real proof and work will begin afterwards. And then that'll be the test for the community and for the department to take that and interpret it for Salem on how it's going to be played out. So Certainly we haven't discounted that. And like Bob said, we're aware of that and being very respectful of that view. So
one of the things that I think the Deputy Chief and Scotty may want to think about are where are those segments of the community that you wish you had a better relationship with? I think those are opportunities where we could understand what some of the apprehension is, what some of the skepticism or mistrust might be. And again, what we're looking for are trying to find pathways to build better relationships throughout the city. I like the way Cindy talks about systems because that's the way I think about things. And it was very clear to me, her folks think about systems in the very same way. So it really is important that this is a way that it truly is a meaningful partnership, and really where are the areas that the police wish they could have a better relationship but don't for a variety of different reasons, and let us speak to those folks and really understand their perspective of things.
Yeah, Bob, I think, the folks that I just gave as far as examples of groups that we want to reach out to, I think from an agency perspective, it'd be really easy to just point you to people that already think and agree with things that go on with the police department. But I know, at least in the ones that I've given you, and I think, Casey, if you put in loose, those are all groups that I think their perspective, their input, their thoughts are going to be really valuable for you to see a perspective that's not necessarily always aligning with law enforcement. I think that a lot of them are I think the judgment is fair, and I think that there are a lot of good comments and conversations that come from that. So I think those are all examples of groups that we need to have better communication, better contact with.
Yeah, and if I can just chime in, Jody.
Please, Casey.
Yeah. So I appreciate all the conversation around this. As someone who's been an auditor for a long time, even though you don't look maybe necessarily old, I think back a decade ago when I was living in DC and was going into federal agencies, where I would introduce myself as an auditor of a process that, as Scotty was pointing out, I was auditing the United States Postal Service with people that had been there for 40 years. And I had to come in there and both let them know that I'm not going to try to tell them how to, they could run circles around me with all the things that they knew. But I have to be able to provide some sort of sense of accountability for the people that are on the other side of the table as well. And so that's really what it's all about. And, building that trust on both sides of the equation so that we have that kind of transparency and accountability and integrity in the process that the people frankly deserve, because they're the people that pay for all of the services that they're getting. And so I think that's what we're just trying to make sure that we bridge that gap. So I appreciate the conversation around it.
And Casey, I think it was an important, like you said, it has to be said. And I think it really gives an opportunity to let the community understand this is what we're thinking, how we're going about it, and give us an opportunity also to, again, reassure the community that we're going to do a very objective and fair process. And if you didn't bring it up, that conversation wouldn't have happened in the open like this. So it's really important that it came up during this dialogue among the steering committee. So I appreciate it.
It does remind me, never is our job more important to make sure the voices are heard at the table. And so continue that effort, if you would please. If you have any other groups or organizations or individuals that you'd like to encourage to reach out and provide that feedback, we've got a couple different mechanisms and also different ways that we can get together as a community to also meet with the members so that folks can have their voice at the table. I think that the process will be helpful as it evolves, as we will see draft information. Draft information will be presented to the community, and then we'll have those community forums in some fashion that hopefully will help us see those gaps that may be missing from what we anticipated. So that'll be good for us to start getting into that process to gauge that too for folks. So. Yeah.
And to your point, Jody, I think the way the scope of work is structured also, it's not just giving a presentation to the city council, but actually going out to community groups and presenting to them as well, and getting their feedback and reaction to the report. So it's not just isolated to the city council, but it's going to be that week. We're going to be doing a lot of different meetings with a lot of different community groups, probably a lot of the groups that we're meeting with as well, to get, say you took the time to meet with us. We want to get back to them, be respectful, and give them our findings and let them react to it. right? So I think that's
Right.
gonna, that's gonna be. We're trying to keep this a very open and transparent process along the way. And so I think we're gonna do everything right. And I appreciate your comments about as we start to move forward, you'll start to see some of where the work's going and things like
Right.
that.
And I see your hand, Cindy. I have one question there, Bob. It'll be in rounds, will it not? So we will see a draft and then we'll see updates and then, okay.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things we'll talk a little bit later in today's meeting is just talking about the structure of the interim report. I want to make sure that we manage expectations. So we're not going to be sharing any insights because I think it's premature. It's too early. But we are going to talk about, what we've done up to this point in time. And then also, as we talked about early on, that structure and what that structure is going to look like in terms of formulating our overall strategy and the deliverables that come out of that product. So it's a short turnaround. So I just want to make sure that there's not expectations that it's going to be more than what it actually is. And we've talked about this in the committee forum as well. So
good. Cindy, please.
Since we're in the community conversation vein right now, and we're publicizing that link for people to make comments, what's a timeline for that to be a cutoff? Obviously, that wouldn't stay open for longevity. And as I'm sharing it, I want to encourage people to post sooner than later so their comments are heard and utilized. But have we put a cutoff date on that?
We don't have one established right now. My personal feeling about it is that it's, again, starting to really pick up and be shared more and more and more. And so I would like to try to keep it open. I wonder if we could even keep it open through the December briefing with council so that there's more, even, an opportunity to reach more people then, and really maybe change the focus of the survey or the question once we have kind of a draft built. So I would imagine, and Bob, you tell me how you feel about that, but I would imagine out loud that it might be sort of at the new year, we might kind of start to pivot towards more recommendations and then try to get feedback on that.
Yeah, thinking about the timeline that we've actually brought before the council, I think January 15th is a safe bet because we'll be getting into our writing phase at that point in time. And I don't want to leave people's opinions out once we start to write because, as Cindy points out, we're not going to be able to take as much information at that point in time because I think we'll be far enough into the process that we need to start to develop the report because it's going to take us a little while to get it to a point where it's been vetted with the steering committee and then it's ready for that presentation in March.
Very good. Thank you all. Right. We are now, unless there's anything else. Yes, please, Ashley.
Great, thank you. I definitely wanted to share the insights from attending the Neighborhood Association chair meeting. I really enjoyed being able to sit in on that conversation. And first and foremost, I just wanted to really acknowledge the passion that was coming out of that group. You can tell they are deeply invested in this community and are great advocates for each and every one of our neighbors. So it was a very well-rounded conversation. Just to kind of summarize the conversation, it really focused on three main pillars, in my opinion. One is just this eagerness, and they were almost craving relationship with the police department. Several people identified wanting to have an officer at the neighborhood association meeting, and it was a regular officer that they got to know. They talked about, sometimes these positions would rotate a little too frequently for them to really get to know and trust their officer that attends the meetings. I thought that was a really great point of conversation. And the second vein is accountability. So there were some pieces about where are the resources going? How are they benefiting my neighborhood in particular? Or I have these concerns that I've brought up numerous times that don't feel resolved. And so they really wanted to know what was the end resolution and how could the police department, but what was the police department doing to resolve these pieces? And then the second the third pillar, excuse me, is around transparency. So many people talked about reports that used to be issued and maps about crime logs or crime reports. And there seems to be an online system now that isn't as user-friendly. So they just really wanted to know what was going on in their neighborhood and how the police were communicating that information to them. So they provided some really great examples, as you can probably tell, very tangible, specific pieces. So a lot of good conversation was had, and I just really appreciate everyone was there and at that forum. And then on a second note, just for possible communities to speak to, I've been really silent at the beginning of this meeting, just trying to rack my brain. And so I think 3 potential additional interviews, if we want to add it, would be the veteran community. I think they're a very specific subpopulation in our community that have very specialized needs and considerations and experiences. And so I'm kind of wondering how that might interface with the police department. The Homeless Coalition might be another great group to talk to regarding the unsheltered population, just clicked in my brain. That's a wonderful group of individuals who are advocates in this community, some of which you guys are already speaking to, but some of which are smaller organizations that might not have had a part in this conversation yet. And then I'm starting to realize a deepening conversation between developmental disability or autism and how individuals who have developmental disabilities engage with the police department. So I'm curious if maybe we could engage an adult living facility or folks who work with this population specifically in this conversation as well. That's it.
Great suggestions. I was going to put Anne Marie on the spot for just a quick second to see if perhaps if you have any contacts in that latter point that Ashley had. I wonder if through the county we may be able to get some information there. So
Absolutely, I was going to speak up. Yes, I work with our local intellectual and developmental disabilities program. I actually speak with them frequently around our mobile crisis services and
great.
When law enforcement is having to go out to some of the homes. And so I'd be happy to give you names. I don't know if I can email that to you after. Just give you some names, and they are also very familiar with the various homes in the area. The other there's those homes, and we also have some of the secure homes as well. And it probably would be a really good idea to talk with them as well. They're called SACU homes. I don't think I can give you what the acronym means, but they're also a very high needs home that are in our. I think we have at least 1 and maybe 2 in our area. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to connect you with some folks that do that work.
Thank you so much. I think hopefully with that connection, and thank you for that. And also when you talk to Department of Human Services, they may be able to help connect as well with some contacts there too. So thank you.
If I could for just a moment, the Department of Human Services has also got Oregon Health Authority within it. You might want to reach out to them specifically as well.
Thank you. Good discussion. I want to look around the room and make sure I don't miss anyone. Most important part of what we're doing is bringing folks to the table. So thank you. And not only are we volunteering, but they too are volunteering. And so it's great to see so much involvement in the community to help together on this audit. So thank you. Anything else? Okay, our next item on the agenda is for updating our goals and objectives. And we reviewed these last meeting. And are we, Bob, are you wanting us to go through them again, or would you like us to offer any feedback if we've had some reflection, or can you help me with that? Have you made any changes?
I think the 2 things we'd like to do is because we're still very much in a listening mode. We want to get your perspectives as well. I think some of you have given those to us in terms of one-on-one, but things that you'd want to share among the steering committee. I think we want to hear those kinds of things. I think the document, unless there's really some major concerns about the way it is really was a milestone that we were trying to achieve. And then Brian's going to talk a little bit later in the meeting about what the structure of the interim report is going to look like, which is a takeoff from that document. So as we talked about early on in the meetings, these are evolutionary documents. These are documents that are going to evolve, and as Ricky likes to say, they're fluid. So we're going to talk about what that's going to look like. So you have a good expectation of what, not necessarily what you're going to see as the report, but you'll have at least a visualization what the report looks like and how it's going to be structured. And you will have been involved in the further development of that report before it even goes to the city council. So, but we're actually formulating that part now. And again, unless there was some major concerns about the initial document, then we're prepared to move forward.
And Courtney or Gretchen, do you need us to vote and approve this to move forward? Just make sure I'm clear.
I don't think we need that. I think, again, the intent of it is to continue to iterate. And so I don't know that it will have a final form. I think we're just looking to make sure that we have all of the feedback.
Great. Are there any observations or feedback from steering team members on the document? We do have it in our packet, at the follow end of the packet. Sorry, Ashley, you're muted there in case you were, okay, thumbs up.
And if I could, I mean, I think, you know, what Casey brought back to the table is important too. What are you hearing among your networks in terms of the audit? And as, you know, kind of Courtney indicated, people are starting to talk to each other now, and we just want to make sure that we're very open, very honest, very transparent. So if there are concerns or issues or things that we should be aware of, love to hear those, you know, from your perspectives as well.
Feedback or observations from team members here? Anything? Please, Ashley.
It's pretty simple feedback. What I'm hearing most is an eagerness to hear the end result of the audit. I think people are excited that the city has taken this step. So it's all fairly optimistic. If anything, people want to hear more about that accountability piece that I mentioned that came from the neighborhood association chair as well. So it's, what are our police doing? How are they supporting our community? We're still seeing some issues regarding diversity and how certain populations in our community may be impacted by policing. And so I think they really want to hear more about that. But overall, it's a general sense of positivity and glad that they're moving this direction.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please, Cindy.
I think the questions and the goals cover a wide range of the police department and the police engagement. I think the one that will be very interesting from both sides is that understanding of what community policing is, and understanding that that's prevention and intervention and what are things that are happening already that may not be well understood. So I was interested in how these questions and goals were situated, but most interested about that community policing effort. I find that when I talk to people that they're confused about what that actually means and how law enforcement from a perspective of enforcing a law would be on the other side of preventing things from happening or preventing victims, preventing things like that. So I think that will be a growing knowledge for everyone, all of our citizens, as we move forward with that one specifically.
Yeah, thank you. Any other reflections from board members? I appreciate the comment on community policing, and I too am looking forward to the future conversations around that topic. I have serving on the Community Police Review Board and know that we have spent time without having applicants to fill our positions, and it's a community role that really helps assist the department. And so I'm hoping that we re-energize that conversation in a real a different and better way to help us all understand how we can work together better. So I too am looking forward to that conversation further. And I know that we have a leadership change that's also coming to the department. I believe Chief starts on December 1 or 7. I don't want to say the wrong date, but
December 7th.
7th. And I know that we're also thankful for Chief Jerry Moore and the years that he's given to the city. And that'll also be an important part of the conversation. I know that also generates more community feedback and input, as I know our new police chief wants to make sure he is going around to the city and also talking with folks. So we're all in a very good position to listen to each other and really formulate our future together. So. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, feedback on the goals and objectives before we move on? Scotty.
Yeah, and remember, I brought this up a little bit during our meeting with Robert, but I think what our officers are also hoping is not only, some outside eyes on what we do and why we do it and are we doing the right things, but maybe at the conclusion of this, also eyes on, what's the city providing? Are there adequate alternatives? Because, folks talk about the police not doing certain things. And that's what I think our officers are hoping, that some of them already know because they do it every day, that there's not adequate resources in some other areas. So the police department ends up there. And so I think our officers are hopeful that hopefully it's a broad view of what the police do and why we do it and how we do it. And it will also maybe expose some areas where the city and maybe some other organizations could be bolstered and, maybe take some of the areas where law enforcement struggles with and maybe take that and have someone else deal with it. So I know I've talked to multiple officers and have asked me that, like, hey, is this audit gonna, talk about, whether it's jail space or homeless beds or a sobering station or all these other things which could assist certainly the police department in not having to not make a criminal matter of a lot of those issues. So at least from our officers' perspective, I know that's one thing they're hopeful of.
Thank you. Anything else?
And I think just to piggyback on that was really kind of the conversation about the systems approach. What parties are not part of the system, or what parts of the system do need to be more robust, and not necessarily looking at only the department, looking at our city as a whole. So I appreciate those comments from internal officers, because our systems locally are taxed. So how do we do that better and make the system itself work better?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Cindy. That makes a lot of sense. It is something we continue to ask our organizations to do more and more and more. And have we taken a step back to say what we expect you to do with what we're squeezing? So that's all a good conversation for us to have as we move forward. Oni, did I see your hand? You all are about an inch, so I'm trying to watch for the signals for me, so. Okay, thank you. Bob, your team has a few observations that they also would like to talk through, or next steps. Do you have anything else before we move on to next steps? I guess I should get at.
No, I think, we want to keep it at a high level because, as I said, we're really still learning, and we're not really prepared to start to form any opinions at this point in time, because we really want to, take it all in and really kind of figure out how it comes together and things like that. But, as Brian indicated, and Rick has indicated, we've had a lot of rich dialogue, a lot of rich conversations, and really people talking about, not only, where there's things being done particularly well, but where there are opportunities for improvement, and also how they play a role in that change as well. So I think it's been really a well-balanced conversation. And as I said earlier, it's really starting to come to light for us, which is a good thing. I was afraid if we didn't get through this first week and we're still kind of scratching our heads, we'd be in big trouble. But it's coming together nicely, and I think we're moving in the right direction. I think a large part has to do with because people are willing to come forward and share their thoughts and really be open and honest about their experiences. And I think that's extremely important. So I really compliment all those we've spoken to, and I really, again, compliment the support staff, because they've done a lot of hard work to to keep this process moving, despite some of the things that are beyond their control, namely the technology stuff. But it's been good. But I think it's worked well, and it's almost worked very seamlessly. So it's been an excellent experience.
Thank you all. Thank you to everyone for all the effort. I've been pleasantly surprised how you've tied in Oregonians in this effort. So thank you to your team for including that perspective. That's also key to a successful audit. So thank you.
Yeah, and Bob, I just to make sure, since we're all sitting here, I know that there's been a lot of exchange of information and requests for different documents and things like that. Has the organization provided you what it is that you're looking for and need on your requests?
No, in fact, Lieutenant Aguilar has been great, because every time we've asked her, in fact, I think she's gone about three pens. She's writing things down, but she's been very responsive. And again, we're trying to be very respectful, not to just create busy work, but really look for documents that come up in our conversations and things we want to kind of look into. So no, we've been getting everything we've been asked for. There's nothing we've been waiting for. So thanks, Deputy.
Okay, why don't Bob and your team, why don't you talk a little bit about next steps? We are scheduled to meet again on December 10th, I believe, right? Next week is December, no, a week after that. Oh my goodness sakes. But December 10th, we are coming back together. And can you talk a little bit about what happens between now and then, and then help us see those next steps?
Yeah. So we're in the process now of starting to evolve that document we talked about, which we're calling goals and strategies, which, and I'm going to have Brian talk about that, because it's really, he's been the one that's really been championing that and really working hard on it. But what you're going to see in the interim report is basically a recounting of what we've done and where we've come from the start of the project up to the point in time when the report gets to the City Council. And in the more than, I guess, probably 2/3 of the report is going to be this piece around goals and strategies. So Brian, if you don't mind, just kind of walking the task force through that document and what they can expect to see as we develop that document.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. So, of course, we just talked about the overarching goals, and those were kind of the very high level kind of giving you, and I think, Jody, you said it in one of the earlier meetings that we weren't in, but it said, it's nice to capture where we've been or where we're starting. So those overarching goals that you've been presented with, really, that's the umbrella. That's kind of the essence that captures the community policing elements, those big components. So between now and December 10th, now that we're getting starting to refine or define now some specifics that'll go in under support of that. And that's what Bob talked about with the objectives and goals and strategies. So now, based on this week, with all the comments, now we're really going to start identifying specific themes, that'll be then equated into written objectives, something that's very clear, something that gives very specifics to what's going to be the framework for the final report. So it's important to know that those will be changing. They're fluid, so they won't, even though we'll write them, and I think that's going to be important for the December 10th, is to let you get a real hard look at those. And it's interesting, some of the observations from the people in this meeting that saw some of our discussions were involved, and what they were thinking, when they're saying, we'd like to see more of community policing in there, or more some of the relationships or connections. I mean, those are the types of things, that we're also seeing that'll help inform what, like I said, the first run through will be themes, major themes, whether it's networking or reaching out for better communications, and then writing that into very specific objectives. And then underneath that, some strategies that we're going to start building upon and expanding out then for the final report. And that'll include tasks, that'll include best practices, that'll include kind of all those steps that will help the department and the city move forward to accomplish that goal or objective. So on the 10th, and then front end loaded into those objectives and strategies, you'll have a narrative that'll kind of outline how we got to those, kind of capture the process up to that point that helped informed the decisions or how we identified some of those. So you'll get that front end narrative, then we'll move into the objectives and the strategies. So it should be a very concise outline It's not going to be 20 or 30 pages, but it'll give you enough direction, the committee, to really, kind of start to look at what that framework's going to look like for the final report. And then those strategies underneath there. So again, it's going to be evolving. We'll continue to refine that. So by the end, when it's put into the final report form, it'll be very specific and have that narrative and all the information that'll support, those core areas that we've been identifying through our work. And it's not just interviews, of course. It's going to be our research and all the outside work we have to do then to really start putting the validation to some of those areas to make it very usable, and someone said it needs to be credible. So we'll be doing all that work to make sure we're not just forming our opinion. Someone said, how do we put in the element of, trust and that you're really, interpreting or moving this forward. So it won't just be the team's per se interpretations, but there'll be a lot of resources that go into to support and validate that and put some real relevance to those areas.
And our goal, quite honestly, as we work towards the final report, is not just give you a bunch of concepts and lofty ideas, but really translate those concepts into actual practice and what does it look like operationally. And I think oftentimes a lot of times these reports don't get that far into the process. They say, well, here's all the things you should do, and then, by the way, go ahead and start to do it. Where this report is going to be talking about those overarching concepts and goals and objectives, but then also talking about what's that look like in actual practice. So there is truly linkage between the concept and the actual practice and the guiding principles that we're backing up those concepts with, in terms of making sure that they're actually, you see them in practice. You hear a lot about that, especially around accountability and things like that. Well, we know there's policy procedures, but how can we ensure the officers are following the policy procedures? So these are all kind of linked together, and make sure that there is a bridge between those two overarching concerns. And so we really want this to be a working document. We want this to be a really good roadmap, if you will. And really, as you talk to the new chief, really giving him some insights that he can either affirm that what we're seeing, he's seeing, or if they're not seeing those things, then probe a little bit further in terms of his own getting up to speed in terms of operating the department. And I told the chief that if I was a brand new commissioner coming into Cambridge and somebody handed me this report, I would have died and went to heaven, because a lot of the work that I needed to do those first 6 to 9 months is, in essence, if we're doing our job right, will have done for him.
Yeah, and one other thing that was really, someone said about the frontline officers or the officers, were even looking at this. How can we deal with jail space? How can we deal with mental health? Some of the things they're seeing every day. So I don't think it's asking them to do more per se, but looking for those efficiencies and talking to the different groups already. The hospital staff, the parks, public works. I definitely see some things I think that everybody's sharing where there's efficiencies that can be really leveraged between agencies. And so you're hoping with someone talked about, I want to really know more about community policing. Well, community policing is, of course, based on the proactive, preventative approaches. So what can you do to reduce or eliminate some of those reoccurring ongoing problems? And that's really the core of community policing is, of course, the prevention or proactive approach. So hopefully, there'll be those, and not hopefully, there'll be those strategies and takeaways where those efficiencies can be maximized, those partnerships can be maximized, so officers can start seeing, the department can start seeing, the community can start seeing, and even from the hospital. The last thing they want is to take on additional responsibilities from the police per se to try to deal with some of these problems. Every one of the departments or agencies are looking for efficiencies, not how to increase their workload, but how to reduce it. So I think we're starting to see some of those overlaps. So I think it's pretty exciting to see that the willingness between the partners to say, we're doing this really good. And I'll use the example from the hospital. They just have really some amazing things they're doing in the community. whether it's marketing or outreach or promoting in community engagement. So some of those same overlaps benefiting the department and not just the PD, but other departments as well. So I just wanted to say, those will emerge. Those are emerging, which Bob said. We'd be kind of, going, oh my gosh, there just isn't this environment that's going to be conducive of this. But I think we're seeing the opposite. Everybody is wanting to engage and be a part of the solution.
Questions on next steps and what we just discussed? I think the next steps will be a little more telling for all of us. We'll start to see where we can offer some advice and feedback, and watching for those gaps in information flow. And I'm really excited to see this next step. So, Bob?
Yeah, the other thing I just want to make sure that we're clear about is if our next onsite is until December 7th and the 14th is the due date, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround. So there are going to be documents that will be presented to the steering committee to get reaction, feedback on, and things like that leading up to it. And also, as I said before, it's a fluid document, so we would not have had an opportunity of having another full week of interviews to incorporate that report. So I don't want people feeling that we didn't hear them or what they said was left out. It's just the timing of when that report's coming out, and I want to be very clear about that.
I think that makes perfect sense. And I think that that's also probably a signal to us as steering team members to be ready to review that document in a quick fashion. Personally, I'd rather you have it in your hands longer, and we can hopefully adjust our timeline to be able to read it before our meetings and be able to give you that feedback. So
that'd be great. That'd be great.
So probably the dumb question of the day, do we have timelines that are established that are actually going to prohibit more positive input or more, I guess, more substantial input? The timeline somewhat artificial, or are they in stone?
Well, I think what we're working, and this is what I tend to do, is I work back from what's our deadline, right? And what do we need to accomplish between that deadline and now? And that's what we're trying to work with right now. As I said, it's been a challenge because we can't physically be in Salem, and I need to get there at some point in time. I really need to spend more time. We all need to spend more time with Salem PD to talk to the officers and really get a good cross section, which we haven't had an opportunity to do. And that's one piece, that's a big piece that we're really worried about. I know that the department will be cooperative in helping us with that process. It's now it's a matter of physically being there or making those kinds of contacts with folks. And again, the one piece that I'm missing is really being able to see the city and the things that you're actually working with. I mean, you can describe it to me, but I need to see it. And so that's the thing I'm really struggling with right now. And that's why I'm hoping we can get out there. But you raise a good point, Deputy. If we've got this one timeline of trying to, again, the 14th of December being the interim report, I just want to make sure there's enough substance in it and really not disappoint the council because it's lacking substance because we haven't had a chance to do enough of our own work to make sure that there's sufficient information in that report.
I'm sorry, if I could just answer a point of clarification. So to me, the purpose of the report to the City Council in mid-December is really a progress report. It's a formal way that we tell the council and the community, we've done X, Y, and Z and D, and next we're doing these things. I think for the purposes of protecting kind of the integrity of the audit, we're not intending to provide any early
findings
or anything, because we've just had these great conversations about not wanting to preclude any other input that might be different from what we're starting to hear. So I guess for me, the question about whether the timeline is driving or precluding or somehow inhibiting comment or feedback, I don't feel like that's going to be true of the December deadline. We've already talked about having the survey inviting stories through January. So I don't think we're getting to that point, but I think what you're trying to say, Bob, is that just because we're producing something, we will have a snapshot. Even though we're all committed to this iteration of work, there will be a point at which we have something that gets prepared.
Right.
may, just because of the timing, not be reflective of everything yet. And I think that's why we're trying to be careful with what we share and when. But moving into the next phase of work, at some point there will be a need to start shifting from taking input to really kind of focusing input around the draft. So at that point feels like it might be sometime in January.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Courtney. That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry about that.
No, that's good.
Thanks for asking. Bob, something perked my to ask, how are you working on getting feedback from police department members beyond leadership and gatherings? I know that we've been doing some individual ride-alongs and also meeting with groups within the police department, but also are we offering opportunities for individual members to be able to reach out, whether sworn or non-sworn?
Yeah, so we've been having, we were going to have a couple conversations with the union because we want to keep them involved, but also the big part of what should have happened this week but couldn't happen are the ride-alongs, because I never got a chance to get out to Salem. We fully intend on continuing to talk to members within the department. In fact, Ricky's already had one of those focus group conversations this week, which he thought was very productive. But that's just one piece of many. So we're going to need to figure out if we can't get out there, how we continue to have these kinds of forums and make sure that we're really talking to officers on all the different shifts and different assignments and things like that. Not necessarily we have to be able to talk to everybody, but we want to get a good cross section of that process. What we did this week really was just an overview of the organization and really getting familiar with the organization, how it's structured, how it operates, how it's broken down into operational components. But now we need to get into actually talking to the people that are doing the work. So the short answer to that, Jody, is yes, we have to spend a lot more time figuring out and working with getting input from the department itself and the members in the department.
Thank you.
Bob, and you've moved forward the survey, right, for personnel?
We have the survey. We're about to distribute a survey. We wanted to talk to the chief and we wanted to talk to Scotty before we just sprung a survey on them. So part of our conversation next week with Scotty and the board is that survey. He'll get a copy of it ahead of time. Again, what we're encouraging the leadership and the union to do is encourage the membership to fill it out, because that's going to give us a good bellwether of what's going on inside the organization. So we have developed a pretty comprehensive survey, but we also developed it in a way that it's not going to take a year and a day to fill out. So we were very careful about being circumspect about the questions we're asking. And again, I didn't want to spoil I don't want this to be a spoiler for Scotty when we have our meeting next week, but one of the things we're going to talk about is that survey and sharing with them so they can actually get some feedback from them as well before we actually ask the department to distribute it.
I think that'll be huge. People want to feel like their voices are heard. I mean, on both sides, obviously. So I don't think it'll be an issue at all getting it completed. But I'll nudge. So
wait till you see it first, Scotty, before you can make that commitment. So
well, yeah, that's true. Good point.
No, I think it's a balanced survey, and it's really gauged to really get people's perspective. And again, it's also for informing the department itself, right? It's not just helping us do a report, but really be a really good internal barometer for the administration, and particularly a new chief coming into the organization.
Yes, perhaps it could be a tool that we use more frequently after you're gone, so that we could keep reevaluating ourselves too. So that's great. Scotty, I'm curious, does the union also include non-sworn?
It does, not that many. We only have our crime lab folks for now. So we only have a couple of non-sworn. And I guess our community service officers are not sworn. So maybe 15 tops non-sworn.
So your records staff and your community service officers?
They're in their own union. I believe they're AFSCME, and then dispatch has their own union as well. So
Bob, I'm assuming we're making sure they have
the survey. I was going to say the survey includes and there are specific questions for the non-sworn staff as well. So we're not just looking at the sworn officers, but really looking across the entire department, and we're inviting everybody in the organization to participate in that survey. So yes, it's great. Be very mindful of the fact that all of them make up that department. So it's important to get their opinions.
Yes, great, thank you. Anything else around next steps that we want to discuss, either from Hilliard Hines team or from the steering team members? Any other questions before we wrap up then? I think that's where we may be.
And Jody, can I make just one? I want to make sure, we talked about, some of the, and I just want to make sure that the people in our interviews, we did hear people that very much wanted to make sure their voice was heard. So even though, a lot of the discussion, we talked about partnerships and, working with different formal groups, there's certainly that the community voice that we are not discounting. So, even though, we're saying positive things about our conversations, there were some real sincere conversations that we're certainly listening to and will be a part of this report. So I don't want to make it seem like we're just, moving this forward with no controversy or no challenges. But again, I think they were said I know they were said very sincerely about some of the personal experiences from the community. So we haven't overlooked that. We're not trying to soft sell any part of this. I just want to make sure, we don't discount that as this just being something that has just been a positive experience and everybody's happy. So, we want to have those voices included in this and be respectful for those individuals that were willing to share their stories. So I wanted to make sure we captured that as well.
Thank you. Casey, did I see a hand? I'm sorry, I glanced away for a moment. Okay. Yes, I think that we haven't actually all said this, but I'm sure we all agree that we're so thankful for everyone that has been involved, and that is stepping forward to help with their stories and information and thoughts and ideas. And the more that we can encourage that, as we've talked about tonight, will be helpful for the process. So thank you all. And thank you to those that are stepping up. I'm pleased to see some of the extra items that are happening, as I heard you talk about the neighborhood association chairs, and true community policing really involves the community in different and better ways. So I'm glad to hear how that's coming together. Anything? Courtney, Gretchen, city stuff, anything else that you need from us?
I would just like everyone to know that I might be emailing you, and I'd appreciate any suggestions you have. I'm going to be doing a follow-up on some of the contributions and suggestions that were made today. So I'm grateful for your response that I expect will be forthcoming shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll be looking. Anything else? Noticing my internet is becoming unstable. So if you need to close without me, or we'll do it real quick. But thank you all so very much. We'll see you again on December 10th, if not on email before then. So
great. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.